Hey everyone, welcome to Cat's Vegan Kitchen. Today I'm super excited to share with you a recipe that came all the way from Lebanon with my grandmother in the early 1900s. This is a Lebanese stuffed squash recipe called Kousa. Give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you never miss a recipe. Let's get started. Traditionally, Kousa calls for lamb or beef, but obviously I don't eat lamb or beef, so I'm going to use impossible meat instead. I'm so excited about this because it actually ends up tasting like my grandmother's recipe. Next, I'm going to add in about a half a cup of tomato paste. One-half cup of uncooked rice. Grandma always said use Ben's rice. 2 tablespoons of good quality allspice. And about a tablespoon of salt. This is going to be our squash stuffing. We're going to mix that up really well. Feel free to mix this up with your hands. That's the way Grandma did it. I'm super excited to have meat substitutes like impossible meat because I can make traditional Lebanese recipes like stuffed Kousa and they actually taste like my grandmother's recipes. If you don't want to use a meat substitute, you can always use tempeh, but I would season it first, and it isn't gonna taste like traditional stuffed squash. I'm gonna mix it up with my hands like my grandma did. All right, in order to stuff the Kousa, you have to actually hollow the Kousa out. If you notice, I have 2 different kinds of squash here. Here in LA, they call this Mexican squash, but this was traditionally what my grandmother would use. I actually prefer the yellow squash. You can try both. You have to take an apple corer and dig into that squash, being very careful not to pierce the sides. And you're just gonna do that until your squash is hollowed out and you have, I don't know, maybe about a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch on the side of the squash. Ta-da! You have your beautifully cored squash that's ready to stuff. Now we're gonna stuff our squash. You're gonna take a small teaspoon, fold your squash up and down, and encourage the stuffing in with one of your fingers. Don't overfill your squash because the rice expands while it cooks. So that's probably a little overfilled. That's probably just about right. If you notice, I have lots of extra filling left. And if I was feeding a big group, I would stuff up a whole bunch of squash for like holidays and stuff. But today, it's just my husband and I eating these for dinner, so I'm actually gonna freeze my Kousa stuffing, so next time I wanna make these, it takes a fraction of the time. So before I used about 3/4 of this tomato paste, I'm gonna use the rest of it. I'm gonna mix it with a cup of hot water and blend it up really well. Now I'm gonna cook my Kousa standing up. You can also lay them down in a pan if you want, but I find this is the way my grandma did it, and also it makes them not lose their filling better. So my Kousa are all standing up. Obviously, if you have more, you can use 2 pans or a bigger pan. And I am gonna pour my tomato paste mixture over that. I'm gonna add a touch more water just so they're about halfway covered. And then I'm going to simmer these over low heat for about an hour. I'm gonna check in to make sure they're not cooking too high and just at a beautiful simmer. So my Kousa's been simmering in its juices for about an hour. I know it's done because the fork goes into the side of the squash really easily and comes out really easily. And you can see that the stuffing has expanded as well. I like to pour a little of the cooking sauce over the Kousa. And there you have your authentic Lebanese Kousa recipe that came all the way from Lebanon. I love to serve this over rice, and I also love to serve it with lubia, which are Lebanese green beans. You can find that recipe and more on my channel, Cat's Vegan Kitchen. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button.